for joining the CaFÉ webinar today. Today we have the second iteration in our Beginner's Guide to CaFÉ webinar series. This month we will go over some valuable tools and tips for how to manage and organize the applications once you received them. The key items that we'll cover today include how to view received applications, how to organize entries using different application statuses, and we'll also talk about how to download application information reports. The first thing we'll talk about is how to actually view the applications once they are submitted. So I'll go ahead and just log in here. To view the applications, we will start in the Events Management page. So from the left-hand side, go to Events and then Management, and you'll see this page. And then we'll select the call from the drop-down menu. You'll then see the table of applications list here. This will list all the applications and the status that they're in. We'll get to what each of these statuses mean later on, but for now, we'll want to pay attention to this received status here. So as soon as an artist checks out and submits their application on their end, their entry will show up on your end here in the received status. This also means that you can assume that any artist in the received status has met the application requirements that you made, such as required materials and minimum number of work samples, and has paid their entry fee if applicable. So to see the list of applications, simply click on the received status. This will load the list of applications in the table here. The table of applications includes the application ID number, the status. At this point, they should all just be received. Last name, first name, username, the city and the state, categories if you have categories enabled, the transaction date, and the transaction details. There's also the notes column, the tag column, and the flag column, all three of which we'll go over more closely later on. So pretty much every column in this table is sortable so that if you click on the column heading, it will sort it. So you can click once to sort ascending or click twice to sort descending. You can do it by first name, last name. You could do it by app ID number. You could do it by the transaction date. That would be the date that the application was received. The default is to sort by last name here, but you might want to use this if you need to just view the applications in a different order. I think transaction date can be helpful if you want to see the most recent or the first applications that had come in. You might also want to sort by something like category to see them grouped together by the category. You can also search for applications towards the top of the page here. So you can search by the name, you can search by the app ID number, or you can filter the results by either category, the ones that you had set up, or by status. Finally, there's also the options to show either tagged applications only or show flagged applications only. And as soon as you put in the search parameters, you'll just click go and it'll pull up those search results. This box can be helpful if you need to search for a couple different parameters at once. Maybe you want to search for 2D art that are flagged only, or depending on the categories that you set up, you might need it for a different reason. That's just a little bit of information about how to view the list of applications. If you have more than 20, you'll see on the right here spots where you can go to view the next page, where you can load more than 20 per page and see them all in one list. Now that we've talked about how to view the list of received applications, I'll show you how to actually view the applications themselves. So to open it, you will just want to click on the app ID number on the left-hand column. This will open the artist application. You'll see at the very top we have the call name and then the artist name here for reference. You also have the application ID number and the status that the application is currently in. So the top section here, we have the contact information. This will include things like the email, phone number. If they're part of a team, it'll list their partner names. It'll list a website if they have one and their mailing address. This is all information that's included on the CaFÉ profile prior to applying to your calls. So, this is already provided for you without even having to ask for it on the call setup. And you can just easily view it all right here. Below this section is the Actions section. This section allows you to update or mark up the application. So first, you can create a tag next to Create Tag. You can actually create up to 3 here. Each tag can be up to 12 characters. They're just supposed to be short notes for the application that you can reference later on or filter by. It can really be used for anything that you need to. Maybe I'll, say here it's a past exhibition winner or something. You'll just click save and it gets added to the list. And then to remove it, you just can click on the X to remove it. And then, like I said, you can add up to 3 tags and it'll just add it to the list here. Below this, you have the comment feature where you can click to add a comment. This is helpful if you need to reference some other things. And you'll just enter a comment and then click save, and then you'll be able to view or edit it later on. One thing I forgot to mention is that the tags can be viewed by the administrator and the juror, but it cannot be seen by the artist. So, you can make it internal. The juror can see this. So this is a good way to be able to communicate something about this application to the juror. If you need to create tags on the applications, they can see it when they're viewing the entries. The comments, though, cannot be seen by the juror, so this is just for your own reference, or maybe if you need to communicate something to a fellow administrator who has access to this page, so you can make a comment and they can see what that is. Below that, we have the flag tool where you can just click to flag or click to unflag the application. And this can also be seen by only the administrator, so cannot be seen by the juror and it cannot be seen by the artist. It's just for your own reference. Usually helpful when you're viewing the applications on the previous page where you had the list. If you needed to view the flagged applications and you know where to reference them, it's easier to find them if you use the flag. And then on the right-hand side, we have the status dropdown. So changing this status here will update the status of the application. So you can see it saved automatically and you'll see that it changes it. You can always go back. Below that, you can view the status history. So this will tell you what statuses the application has been moved to and when it was moved and by whom. So, you can see this application has been changed multiple times, but you'll see exactly when the artist had submitted it because it was changed from started to ready to receive. That's when you get to see the application. And then it'll go on to say, which administrator logged in and made some changes to the status. So this is helpful if you need to maybe jog your own memory of what you did with it, or if you're working with another administrator and they changed the status and you're wondering if that was them, you can reference it here. Below that, if you have categories enabled, you'll be able to change the category here. So just update it and it will change automatically. The category is self-determined by the artist when they submit it, but maybe if they chose the wrong one or if you want to send it to a different category, you can do that here. And then below the action section, we have the form answers section. If you built any custom questions here, this is where they will be listed. You'll see the question and then the answer provided by the artist. If the artist did not provide an answer, it will say no answer provided, proceed to the next section. This is also where you'll see any files that were uploaded as the answer. So if they uploaded their resume, you'll come here and there will be a little link where you can click to download the file, and that's where you download it. Below this section is the work sample section. Again, you'll see the category listed. Below that is the artist statement. So if you ask for artist statements on the application, this is where you'll see it. And then you'll see the thumbnail of the work sample that was submitted by the artist. And you can click this thumbnail to view the enlarged image along with the additional artwork details that the artist uploaded with the image. One thing that I will mention here is the distinction between our two jury types. So as you are probably aware, CaFÉ has two different types of calls in CaFÉ: scoring by art, which is where the images submitted by the artist are separated into individual entries. And then we also have scoring by application, which is where the images submitted are combined into one application and you're scoring it as a whole. So depending on the call type you have, you may see either one work sample here like we're viewing, since this call is jury by artwork, scoring by artwork. Or if your call is set to scoring by application, you'll see multiple work samples here. So as you can see, we have one work sample here submitted by this artist. And if I go to the bottom to click to view the next application, you'll see we have the same artist. They submitted more than one work sample. So when I get to the bottom, you'll see the next work sample on its own application, since they're treated as individual applications. You'll see too that the form answers and statement and everything is just the same. It's just copied over, but the work samples are different for each application. And go to previous. And go back and forth from the bottom there. The artist application page will also include a list and record of any email sent to the artist through CaFÉ. So we don't have any listed here yet, but if I were to send an email through the events communication tool, maybe notifying them of the results or updating them on the timeline, or maybe I sent an individual email, this will be listed here and it'll say the date sent and the details, and then the option to view the email itself. So speaking of sending individual emails, I'll show you quickly how to send an individual email. So as you know, you could go to the events communication tab to send a mass email to a status of artists at the same time. But if you wanted to send an individual email just to one artist, you can go to this application page like we're on here. And on the contact information, click on the email. This will then pull up the emailer form here. And you can put in your information, draft a message, attach a file if you need to, preview it, and then send it. Just note that this is like a one-way email, so you can send an email to them, but if they reply, they'll reply to this email address that you've included in the reply to email address. But this is a good way to notify artists. Maybe they have, an application that's incomplete and you've put them into the incomplete status, which I can talk about later. And then you want to notify them what they need to do to update their application. You can send them an individual email. And that would then be listed on the emailer section of their application, which I'll go back to now. So it would just be listed here. And then finally on the application, there is the transaction details for when they submitted their application. This will include any coupon codes used, as well as the total amount paid, and if they paid any additional media fees. So any products they purchased for this application will be listed here, and the total will be down here. This is $0 since we used a discount for this dummy application. And then if you wanted to, we'll talk about this later, you can go to click the full income breakdown report of all the transactions for your call. That's some information about how to view the application. If you wanted to go, you could click next to view the next application and click through back and forth, or you can go back to the application list that we had pulled up before. That's some information about how to, view the applications, kind of notate them if you need to. Like I said, here on the right side, there's these notes column will show you the things that you've done. So here is that status history thing that we were looking at before. So that little clock icon you can click on from here. Same thing with comments. You can view or add or edit any comments from that notes column. You can view those tags that we created, and you can, sort the table to view all tags at once. And then same thing with flags. You can click on it and it'll show you all the flags or the unflags at once. Now I'm going to talk about how to organize the applications or the entries by changing their status. So as we covered, all apps will start out in the receive status here, but you can change the status of the application if you need to separate them or distinguish them from each other. And then, of course, eventually you'll use some different statuses down the road to determine which entries have been invited and which ones have been not invited. That will kind of happen automatically in the jury stage. As you can see, we have several different statuses, and this table will tell you how many entries are in each status. And then you can click on it like we've shown before to view the applications within that status. So each of these statuses can be used in different ways depending on what you need. Some of them are more obvious than others, and some of them you might not even use at all. I'll quickly go through what each of them means so you're more aware of how you may use them to your benefit. First, we have accepted. Accepted status can be used for a couple different functions. First, some folks like to just use it interchangeably with the invited status. This is totally fine, although artists in CaFÉ are more familiar with and often prefer the invited status. And the invited status is that default status that's used in the jury administration process. But the second, and honestly the most intended use of this status, is that it's used in tandem with the confirm invite and purchase due date feature, also known as the confirmation deadline feature. That's the feature where if you're having your artist accept or reject the invitation once you've invited them and after the jury is already ended, you'll have them go into CaFÉ and either accept or reject their application, at which point, if they accept it, they'll be changed to the accepted status. Next is the awaiting payment by check status. Entries will move to the status if the applicant selected pay by check option at checkout. So when you receive a check from the applicant, you can then go into here and change their status to received. So this is the only exception to when artists submit their application. If they pay by check, it will instead put them in the awaiting payment by check status. That's just saying, the artist is going to be sending you a check. And once you receive it, you can put them in received. The next status is confirmed. Confirmed is also used in tandem with that confirmation deadline feature. If you have a post-jury participation fee or a handling fee or a booth fee, when that invited artist accepts their invitation and then pays that additional fee, they're moved from accepted, since they accepted it, into the confirmed status. So confirmed means they've both accepted their invitation and paid that additional fee. Declined, again, this is used with the confirmation deadline feature, and it's used when an applicant declines the invitation. So we only see a handful of calls use the confirmation deadline feature. So for the most part, you don't have to worry about the accepted status, the confirmed status, or the declined status. But you could use them if you wanted to in your own way by defining them however you need. So you could use declined interchangeable with not invited, accepted interchangeable with invited or confirmed. But, if you like to kind of stick to the default, you would just use invited, not invited, and not worry about those other three. So the next one is exception. You'll use this status if an artist has an application that needs to be modified after the deadline. So essentially, you're just giving them an exception to be able to edit their application after the deadline is already passed. When the applicant finishes making their changes, you must manually change them from the exception status back to received. So if an artist comes to you and they need to make changes, but the deadline's already passed, you'll change it to exception. The artist will go in, make their changes. They'll save their changes, let you know that they're done making those changes, and then you put them manually back into the received status. The next status is exempt from jury. This one isn't used too much, but you can use it if the application is exempt from the jury process. Some folks do this, with board members or participating jurors or something like that, where they don't need to be viewed in the jury stage. So you can just set them aside by putting them in exempt from jury. Next is the incomplete status. This is the status you need to use if an artist needs to modify an application before the deadline. So this is used before the deadline, whereas exception is used after the deadline. When using the incomplete status, if the deadline is still in the future, an artist comes to you, says they need to make a change, you move them from received to incomplete. The artist makes their changes, they save their changes, and then in this case, they'll actually resubmit their application themselves, so you don't have to do it manually. They just click the right buttons and it just automatically goes back to received. So again, exception is used after the deadline, incomplete is used before the deadline. Then we have the invited status. This, of course, is used after the jury to invite the applicant to participate and or indicate that the artist has been selected as a finalist. Next is not invited, so that, with the invited status, it's used after the jury is done, and it's used to notify the artist if they've been, not invited to participate, not selected, or is not a finalist. Next, we have the other status. The other status can be used as like a general placeholder or to group specific artists together. This is best to use as like a catch-all for something. It has the most fluid meaning, so you can use it whatever you need it for. You can define it however you want to define it for yourself. Next, of course, we have the receive status, which we've already gone over. Submitted applications appear in the receive status. One important thing I'll note here is that this is where you'll want to leave applications and or return them to in order for the jurors to be able to see them and to be able to start the jury. So if you review entries or if you put them into different statuses, you'll just want to make sure everyone who needs to be juried goes back into received, since jurors can only see applications in the received status. Next is reviewed. So you can also use this for whatever you need, but specifically you could use it to indicate that the entry has been reviewed. Again, if you go through and are reviewing applications as they're being received and you just put them in review status to say you've taken a look at them, maybe you made sure that they're qualified, you'll just want to make sure you return them back to received before the jury begins, because like I said, you can only jury applications that are in the received status. And then roster status, this one's not really used much, but it's used to create a pre-qualified list of applicants and allows the applicants themselves to actually modify their active entries at any time unless you move them to a different status. So this is typically only used by public art roster calls. Next, we have waitlist. So this is used after the jurying if the applicant is on the waitlist. It can also be used however you need to set some entries aside as you confirm your invited participants or whatever you need. And then finally, we have the withdrawn status. This can be used if the application has been withdrawn by the artist or if you need to withdraw it yourself from consideration. For example, if it's ineligible or if the artist has been disqualified or if they're outside of that local region. So those are the different definitions of each application status. Like I said, you can use any of these for whatever you need, either before, during, or after the jury. One thing to remember, though, is that artists will be able to see the status of their application within their CaFÉ account unless the jury is in progress. So specifically, if the jury status is set to, quote unquote, in progress, that's the setting, the artist cannot see their status. But if the status is either not yet started or if it's after the process and you've set it to complete, artists can see what their status is. So I only say this because if you're moving applications around and you're not in the jury stage yet, you may or may not get some questions from artists who log in and kind of see that their status is maybe set to other or set to reviewed, and they might ask you what that means. They might ask us what that means. So you'll just want to make sure that you're aware of that. But we don't typically see artists get confused. It's just every once in a while, we do get questions about that. So now that we've gone over the definitions, I'll quickly show you how to change the status of an application. To change the status of an application, you'll first just want to find it by either clicking the status it's in. You could click View All to view them all. You could search for it in the search by box. If you go to change the application, what you'll do is just simply change this drop-down menu, and you can change it to whichever one you need. You'll see that the application status gets updated automatically. So it'll automatically just go to whichever status you moved it to. And you can always go back and, change it back. If you need to change all of the apps in one status to another, you can go to the bottom of the table and go here where it says change all artists in the receive status or whichever status you have to the new status. And then you'll just, move it over. Let's say you've gone through and you've viewed each application and you're ready to just move them all to reviewed. You can click on that and then just click go. And then you'll see all of those applications get moved to the new status. I'll just go ahead and move them back. Make sure you move them back too so that they are ready for the jury. And then, of course, once you go to the jury stage, you'll also perform a couple steps once the jurors have scored to move the applications from the received status to the invited and not invited statuses. These steps will be covered in our next webinar next month when we go over the jury process. Another way you might want to organize and keep track of your applications in CaFÉ is by downloading reports of the application info. We do have several reports you can use to take the applications offline, organize contact information, and keep track of the artwork. So I'll go over each of these reports to give you an idea of what is available. Like always, we're going to be in the Events Management tab, so we're going to remain here. You'll then first select the status of the info you need. So if this is after the jury process, you might click on Invited just to view the invited applications. For now, we're acting as if we haven't yet started our jury, so I'll go to the Receive status or click View All. Once the table of applications loads, you'll see at the top kind of right, we have two options, Download XLXS and Download PDF. Under Download XLXS, which is spreadsheet, we can download spreadsheets of contact information, application answers, or media information. Contact information will give you a spreadsheet of the artist's name, mailing address, email, phone, and website. So everything that was at the top portion of that application we were looking at. And then application answers will give you the artist's basic info and email. So just, keep track of who's who, but then it will also list their answers to your custom form questions if you created any. So you can download those answers there, including like the artist statement and stuff like that. And then media information, again, will list the basic artist information, but will also include their image information, such as the medium, title, dimensions, price, year completed, all those things. These reports here are all downloaded as spreadsheets, so you may want to use them if you need to sort for information. Maybe you need to get the info for your labels for the artwork, and you can view the media information one to get the info for those. Maybe you want to retrieve all the emails for your invited artists or received artists, so you can download the contact information. You could do that if you needed to create like a mailing list or something like that too. So those reports are helpful, and you can further sort the information in those spreadsheets. Under download PDF, we have applications and media inventory list. Applications, I'll go ahead and just click it. You could do it as a juror or an administrator. Doing it as a juror would remove some of those jury permissions you set up, such as like hiding certain application answers or anything like that. We'll go over that next month as well. But if you're an administrator, you could just download the report here. Go ahead and click it and open it. The applications PDF shows each application on its own page along with the thumbnail images. This looks exactly the same, like we were kind of looking at it before on the CaFÉ site, where you have the different sections on the application. So this might be helpful if you need to go offline to review the applications. Maybe you want to send them to your juror ahead of time or anyone else. This is a giant PDF of all the applications at once. And then I'll go back here. The download PDF option with the media inventory list, this will just automatically download, and I'll go ahead and open it up. This will list the media information we talked about on the spreadsheet. So the title, medium, dimensions, everything like that. But this one's in PDF format. And as you can see, it's in a grid like this with the thumbnail images. So this is often helpful maybe when you're hanging a show or having the works delivered for the exhibit. So you can quickly reference the pieces that were invited and check them off. So you can have that visual reference. Some also you'd like to use this as, again, to make those labels with this artwork information. So then before we move on, I'll show you a little pro tip for these reports. So back at the table here, if you need to download either type of report that's in a certain order, you can first sort this table and then download the report. So the default is to sort by last name, which is pretty common, but let's say you needed to download it in a certain order where the categories are all, contained together. So I'll have the 2D art first and then the 3D art. I can click on that column heading to sort this table first. And then, as soon as I download whatever report I need, it should be in that same order there. Once you download the reports too, if you're in Excel or whatever you're viewing the spreadsheet, you can download it and then further sort by maybe medium or something like that. So then another report I'm going to show you before we wrap up is a report that might be useful to you when viewing and managing the applications as you receive them. This is the income breakdown report. You'll want to use this report to view the itemized list of artist purchases, transactions with the dates, fee types, any coupons they used. Especially if you collect entry fees for your call, you'll want to be familiar with this report for your accounting needs. You'll find this under the Reports tab on the left under Income Breakdown. And here you'll first just choose the date range that you need it from. So you can, say I need it just for this specific month to date. You can filter any options. If you don't have an entry fee, be sure to uncheck the $0 transactions, because that means, a $0 entry fee, which is free. You'll want to still view any of that. So you'll want to uncheck that. But if you have an entry fee, maybe you check that. And you also check the checks, check mark the checks to hide it so that you can only view credit card information. And you can, do it with active or archived calls. Just go ahead and click the call name you want to view it for. You can do it for multiple calls at once if you have multiple calls per month and you're trying to get the income for that specific month. And then if you wanted to view the downloaded report only instead of viewing the actual table, you can just check mark display downloads only. And this, when you run it, will just give you the download. So you can click to download it and it doesn't even bother loading the full table. But to show you the table, I'll uncheck that. Then I'll click run report. So you can see here the transaction information for each artist who applied and submitted to the call. If you have an additional media fee, it'll be listed here and it'll tell you how many additional media fees they pay. And it'll show you the total. At the bottom of the report here, you'll see the income for the period or the event itself. So this will show you the total number of transactions, how much you collected. This is the gross amount. And then the credit card fee total will also be listed. The credit card fees is 3.25% transaction fee for all users paying by credit card. These fees will be deducted on your monthly remittance check, so you'll want to just pay attention to the net amount for how much you'll receive. So this income breakdown report can be handy when you need to verify whether an artist successfully completed their transaction. So you can check to make sure they're on here. This is helpful if you want to view those total entry fees and media fees paid. Maybe you are selling other products such as memberships or catalogs or something, so you can track that info. Like I said, you can set the date range to the previous month so you can determine how much you might expect in your monthly remittance check. And then just like those other reports, you can download them as a spreadsheet or any of these file formats, and you'll just click download and it'll download it. So between this report and those other reports on the events management page, those are the ones that will really help you keep track of the information that the artist submitted to the call and will help you kind of, organize any information that you need. And it helps you take some of that information off of CaFÉ. Now that we've gone over all of that, this concludes our webinar of how to manage the application submitted to your call in CaFÉ. I hope you learned some helpful tips for staying organized and keeping track of the applications as they come in and before you start jurying them. The question is, would you only send not invited out after the 3 invited finalists have accepted the invitation to put in the final designs? If they don't accept, then we have to go to the 4th highest scored applicant. Yeah, so it sounds like if you're doing something where you have finalists and stuff, you don't have to do the process where you're asking artists to accept or reject. Some folks really only do that if they're asking for that additional participation or handling fee. Otherwise, the accepting or rejecting application process for the artist isn't necessarily familiar to them. But if you were going to use it, you could, ask the invited finalists to accept or reject. If they decline, then you could go to one of the artists and in the not invited status, or maybe you create a wait list of artists that you'll go to if one of them doesn't accept the invitation. But you could wait until after you kind of definitely have your invited finalists confirmed they've accepted their invitation, if you're going to do that, before you notify the not invited artists. Yeah, thank you for that question. That's a good one. Thanks everyone for joining us, and be sure to join our next webinar next month.